Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Khalil Doheny. I'm the Senior Content Marketing Manager at Digital Niche Agency. Today, we have the team of Airthium. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing today?
Great.
Hello.
Excited to host this webinar.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited too. This webinar is, for everyone who's attending today, we're going to talk a little bit more about, the current crowdfunding campaign, what the team at Airthium is up to, and we're going to answer some questions at the end of the presentation that we'll be having. But before we get started, we'd like to know where everyone is tuning in from. I'm currently in LA. We're finally seeing that weather change. It's the holiday season. Gentlemen, where are you guys tuning in from right now?
I'm in Austin today. Very nice weather. Can go outside in t-shirt. It's beautiful. Sorry, everyone. I know it's not the same everywhere. Like Andre has a big jumper.
Yeah, I mean, Paris is like 3 degrees Celsius out there, almost freezing. So everyone is, as you can see, winter time.
Yeah.
3 degrees, that's what, 35 Fahrenheit? That's quite cold.
Yeah. Awesome. Do you guys want to kind of just quickly give a quick background of yourselves, just your history and then how you got to where you're at today?
So yeah, so I started Airthium right after my PhD. I did a PhD in plasma physics. Before that, I had an engineering master's degree in mechanical engineering from École Polytechnique in France. I always knew I wanted to do a startup. It took 4 ideas to find the right one. But this one really stuck. We really have a very strong innovation here. And I met Frank in 2016. So I let Frank tell the way we met and how he started to work with us.
Yeah, it's quite a cool story, actually. We met at a conference on deep tech startups called Hello Tomorrow. It's a worldwide conference in many countries where scientists gather every year. And I was looking to change career. I used to work in the satellite industry for an American company, actually, called Intelsat. I was a sales director there and wanted to fight climate change. So that's how I looked for climate tech startups and met Andre in Paris back in 2016.
Awesome. And I know you guys put a presentation together. Like I mentioned, we're going to go through a presentation for this whole webinar. And then at the end, we're going to answer some questions. So if you do have a question during the presentation, please leave in that Q&A box below. We'll be more than happy to answer that towards the end. But just a quick disclaimer, due to SEC guidelines, we can't talk about questions surrounding the financials, can't talk about the valuation, we can't discuss future projections. So if you have any questions around that, please message Frank or Andre directly. We'd be more than happy to get you those answers. With that being said, gentlemen, the floor is yours, and let's go on with the presentation.
Okay, so let's share the screen. Okay. So Airthium, how did we start? We started this company because we want to make a change. As President Obama once said, we are the first generation to feel the effects that we are changing the planet in some way. And we could be the last generation who could do something about this. So what exactly am I talking about? So first, 20th century brought with it the space age. We were able to send probes in outer space. And one of those probes, Voyager 1, took this picture of the Earth from very far away, further than Neptune. And this tiny dot you see here, that's us. That's Earth, seen from Voyager 1, with the best telescope it had. So it gives us a sense of perspective, like just how big everything around us is. And when you look at time, it's kind of the same. Humanity appeared not that long ago, actually. Complex life started way before that. Just imagine how 100K and 500 million in dollars are different. Just so are years. This is how many years ago life appeared. And 250 million years ago, the whole world was kind of dominated by those creatures you see at the middle of the screen, which are trilobites. And they were everywhere, and suddenly they were nowhere. They had gone extinct because of something we still don't understand. We still don't know exactly what killed the trilobites, but we know it killed 95% of all marine life back then. And it happened over millions of years. It was very slow, actually, because of the slow extinction. And the problem is that nature has always worked on such slow scales. Evolution, the way species change and adapt to their surroundings, they can adapt in some way, but adapt to big changes, it takes hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. But we live and die by the century, and the technology we build goes even much faster than this. So the problem is not by how much we change the world, although it also is. The problem is how fast we change it. And if we look at the average temperature around the Earth, right, it's been measured by all the stations around the world, and it's rising slowly but steadily. And we can put it into perspective, of course. 2,000 years ago, the temperature wasn't that different. Problem is, it starts to increase really fast. And here it seems fast, but not fast enough. This is how it actually is. So 20,000 years ago, we were in an ice age. Then the temperature rose slowly. It took 10,000 years to rise 3 degrees. Now we are about to make the same in just a century. And so we are moving too fast. We are changing the environment of all living things around us with technology, with waste, with CO2, with everything we create. And it's kind of too fast for nature to adapt. And underlying this problem is the fact that in the back of our minds, we believe we can live without nature around us because we are just hacking away at it. And me and Frank decided we had to start something. So we started Airthium. So what exactly are we doing? What are we building? How are we trying to stop this? We are attacking the non-renewable sources of energy, and we are attacking the emissions in terms of CO2 emissions that contribute to this rising temperature, which is really fast, and that we have to make slower. And to make slower, we have to make it smaller as well. And so we started by industrial heat. So many of you probably never heard of industrial heat. When you think of industrial heat, you think furnaces where we smelt steel. That's a big part of it. That's actually the largest part of it. But there is also steam and drying. So we need steam, for example, to make paper, all kinds of paper. We also need steam to sterilize foods. We need steam in almost every industry. Similar for drying. Every time you extract something from the earth, at some point you have to dry it. At some point it's mixed with water and then you have to dry it. All that energy for the steam and drying has to come from somewhere. And it turns out there is a better way to do it than has been done until now, than everything that has been done until now. This is what we're targeting. So why is industrial heat such a big problem? Well, because it's 1/4 of what we send into the atmosphere. Right now, we are sending more than 100 times, actually several hundred times, the amount of CO2 that the natural sources were sending up to now. The natural sources were volcanoes. This is where all the natural CO2 comes from, usually. That's how it was before us. And we produce hundreds of times more than that. And 1/5 of this is based on, it comes from industrial heat. So everything I showed before. And we are targeting steam and drying, which is 1/6 of those 22%. So 3% of worldwide CO2 is steam and drying. And this is what we are changing. So when you need industrial heat, the easiest way to make this is actually to burn a fuel. when you burn any kind of fuel, when you burn gas or coal or wood or anything, you get heat. If you want to make electricity from that heat, you need to convert it. And this conversion is not very efficient. The best efficiency we can make on Earth right now from heat to electricity is about 64%. And so this is why back in 2020, the cost of natural gas was $10 per megawatt hour thermal, and the cost of electricity was twice that. If you look at Europe right now, all those prices are multiplied by like 20, but the ratio stays the same. Electricity is still about twice more expensive than natural gas. Sometimes it's 1.3, sometimes it's 5 times, but it's always more expensive. So when you compare natural gas and electricity, there is always this price discrepancy. And then there is this thing called heat pumps. So heat pumps, they can do this magic trick of basically taking electricity and generating lots of heat from it. Actually, they do that by displacing heat from something to something else. Electricity is this kind of noble form of energy, which can be used to displace heat from one thing to the other. If you look at your fridge and you turn it on, the inside will get colder. But as you probably heard, nothing gets destroyed, nothing gets created, everything is just transported. So the heat that was inside your fridge has to go somewhere. So essentially it goes out of the fridge to the back or to the side or to the top. Usually when your fridge is running, you can feel it is getting hot from somewhere. And this heat is not only the electricity it's using, it's the heat that was taken from the inside to go out. And you can do the opposite. Right now, outside my flat, it's like 3 degrees Celsius, it's very cold. Heat pumps can draw heat from this already cold outside world and bring it into my house. And heat pumps, as a way to heat a house, are actually mandatory in the northern countries of Europe, like Denmark, for example. You cannot build a new apartment building without heating it up with heat pumps. You cannot use natural gas, you cannot use fuel, you have to use heat pumps. That's because with 1 unit of electricity, with 1 kilowatt hour, so 1 unit of electrical energy, they can channel 2 units from the outside world inside. And so in addition to the unit you spent, you get 2 more. So buy 1, get 2 extra, essentially. And so you get more heat for the same amount of electricity. This is because electricity is this kind of noble form of energy. It's a low entropy form of energy. And so doing this, a factory owner can reduce his energy bill. They can spend 3 times less on electricity, which makes the energy cost similar to the one of natural gas. But the good point with electricity is that it can come from all kinds of sources, including solar and wind, renewable sources, or hydro. So when you use electricity to power a heat pump, not only do you use a form of energy extremely efficiently, on top of that, this energy can be very low carbon, very renewable, so it doesn't impact the environment. And this is great, but it works only for houses. It works for hot water. It works to do HVAC in an airport or a mall. It works for all those things. But for industry, for steam and for drying, it's too hot. Actually, heat pumps, they have this problem. The ones that exist cannot get hot enough. They're stuck at 160 degrees Celsius, which is about 300 Fahrenheit. They cannot supply heat above that temperature. But the problem is lots of applications of industrial heat are higher than this. And there is no heat pump to service them. No way to save on the energy bill if they want to decarbonize, if they want to cut just CO2 emissions. So this is where we come in. We bring a heat pump that can go very high temperature for the first time, servicing those potential customers, which were outside the reach of conventional heat pumps. And this machine extends the total addressable market of heat pumps by $13 billion per year. So those additional $13 billion are essentially a market which only heat pumps like us can service, and we are the only ones being able to target that market right now. It's a technology race. Technology enables you to service a market, essentially. And how do we do that? So it's a technological innovation. It's a new kind of engine. It's called a Stirling engine. You might have heard of Stirling engines before, especially if you're around in the 90s. There was those efforts to try to harvest solar energy, not with photovoltaic panels, the black panels, but with mirrors and concentrating the sunlight to make something hot. There are still power plants like this today, but back then they tried to make this with placing an engine at the center of a dish. It's called dish Stirling. So this is the only way that those engines have been used before. There are also submarines that use Stirling engines, but they haven't been used because, widely, because until now, they have never been efficient enough. They have been very expensive because of one part, which was very expensive, and they haven't been that reliable, or at least you had to pay to get them reliable. And we solved all three problems all at once. This took a lot of time. It was a lot of research, but we found a way to do this. We increased the efficiency of the Stirling engine from 64% of its maximum potential, which is the Carnot efficiency, to 86% of the Carnot efficiency. So we got more than twice closer to the maximum efficiency that it can ever reach because of theoretical limits. And we did that while making it cheaper and while making it more reliable by removing all sliding and rotating seals. And this is how we target our market. We enable this engine, which is very efficient and a lot cheaper, and suddenly it makes economic sense. So how does it look like in the real world? Let's say you have a food processing factory. You need steam to sterilize food. You need steam to cook. You need steam for various uses. So for various uses. So you have a gas-fired steam boiler, for example, this one, and you make medium pressure steam, not just low pressure steam, but a little bit higher in pressure. So it's 180 degrees Celsius, about 370 Fahrenheit. To make that kind of steam, usually you burn gas and you're not that efficient. If you want to switch to electric because you want to power it by green certificates and green energy, then you would have to use a resistor, a very simple resistive heating. But you would use a lot of electricity, as I showed earlier, and this would cost you a lot. With our technology, you save more than half of electricity compared to a resistive boiler. So you can actually take out all the carbon for a 0% increase in your energy bill. And sometimes it can even get cheaper. So this is what we make. We enable industrial users to switch to zero carbon heats in their application without spending more. And we do the same for hot air. As it works for steam, it also works for hot air used for drying. For example, air at 200 degrees. There are lots of different kinds of technologies that can do that. And all of them have some kind of issues. Either they don't go high enough in temperature, like the first two, or they are reserved for very specific use cases, like niche applications, like mechanical vapor recompression. This is a technology that is only used in distillation, for example. And then solar thermal and biofuels are simply too expensive for large scale use in the industry. So this is why we really find a place, a need that we meet in the industry of low cost, dependable, decarbonized heat between 150 and 500 degrees Celsius. To get to market fast, we will rely on partners. We will work with integrators who will basically take our engine, which is what we know how to do, and package it as a boiler or a dryer and sell it to their respective audiences. And then they will do the maintenance, the local maintenance, the one that doesn't require the whole engine to be sent back to the factory. Finally, we will have some kind of control software because our engine requires a very specific software to be able to run. Actually, this is the same that happens in wind farms, where the wind farm cannot be sold and operated unless it runs the software from the wind turbine manufacturer. It's the same for us. So we will have a data link to the customer, and we'll be able to know exactly how they are using our engine and how can we improve it to keep responding to their actual needs. Our team is still a small team, but we're about to hire many people. We are 12 people right now. 6 of us are PhDs because it's a very technical project. We have to make a world premiere. Essentially, it's a world record in terms of efficiency, also low cost, and many other parameters. So Frank and I are on the call today. On the webinar, we also have a CTO named Gaëtan. And the people in our advisory board are mostly connected to the renewable energy space. We have former executives, we have a former CTO. And so all of those people really help us get to the market in the best possible way. So we were started in 2016. And essentially, this means we already had one life. We didn't die, and we get all that experience to come back stronger on the next iteration. So basically what happened, our first technology had lots of promise, but it used some materials which posed some corrosion issues. Those corrosion issues were sorted out because we removed those materials. And there is also a story I can tell about this, which is that in France, even the best technologists in their respective industry had to take 20 years to find a corrosion problem in the nuclear power plants. We found it in 3 years. So essentially, it was a lot faster. And since then, we managed to do the same that we did without those materials, which is a lot simpler. Right now, we just use molten salt, helium, and stainless steel. Nothing that hasn't been proven at very large scale for decades. We have been hosted by Air Liquide for 3 years to help us iterate on our prototypes. And last year, we raised our first refund round, about $1.3 million. And this year, we are raising another round. What we want to do with this round is get to the next stage. We want to get to a heat pump demonstrator. So just as a precision, this timeline is our best estimate of what we believe our future would look like. Of course, we cannot commit to it because it's in the future. But this is how we set up our teams to get to our goal, our end goal, to service the heat pump market with our high temperature heat pump first of its kind. So we would like to get to megawatt scale in a few years if everything goes well. And what's interesting is that once we get to this heat pump market, we can get to the energy storage market. So essentially, if you think of lithium ion, which is the energy storage technology everybody knows today, it started small, very small actually. It started powering laptops and cell phones because laptops and cell phones cannot run without the battery. So the value of that was very high. So it didn't matter that the battery actually cost a lot. It cost maybe 100 times more than it costs today. But it was still good enough for this application because the application does very high value. And the same happened then when it moved to cars. Lithium-ion batteries became cheaper, so they became cheap enough to be used for cars. And this is how it happened with Tesla, first making Model S and then Model 3 and making everything cheaper. And now all of the car companies are starting to make electric cars. And then lithium-ion started to make batteries for the grid. There are lithium-ion batteries to store solar energy for the day and then deliver it at night to the grid. This only happened because the first two markets of portable electronics and cars existed. Otherwise, if back in the 70s, the researcher pitched the lithium-ion batteries to store power from the grid, it wouldn't have worked. People would have said they would need hundreds of billions of dollars to get to this point, and they would have been right. So you need a step-up market, a beachhead market, to get to the end market you want, which is changing the power grid so that it doesn't need fossil fuels anymore. And this is exactly what we're doing. It turns out the same engine we use for heat pumps, for industrial customers, can power an energy storage system that can store thousands of hours of energy. You might have heard of the Tesla Powerwall, right? Which can store a few hours of solar energy and give it to you at night. Well, this battery stores thousands of hours. And to understand why this matters, imagine a hotel which only gets customers for one convention every year, and that's it. So every room is filled once per year for like 2 or 3 nights, and then nobody shows up for the rest of the year. The hotel will have to either sell their rooms very expensive, so that would mean a batteries that sells electricity a few dollars per kilowatt hour in energy costs, or the hotel would have to be very cheap, like prefabricated. So this is exactly what they say. This is like a prefabricated battery that is 100 times cheaper. The way it works is a bit complex, but essentially it's made of parts that have all already seen some use in the industry, except 2 parts. One, which is a Stirling engine, which we are building, and one, which is a specific ammonia burner. Everything else on this schematic has already been used at scale in the industry for decades. Essentially, we are using the sun and wind to synthesize a fuel, which is ammonia. Ammonia can be made from water and air and renewable electricity. Then it can be stored very easily, just like you store propane or gasoline. It can be stored very cheap in large tanks for 2 years or 3 years. So you can tap into this tank anytime solar and wind run out of energy, but you cannot do it too often. So that's why you need a short-term storage, which is heat. So during the day, we will heat up molten salt or sand with solar or wind power. And this heat will then be stored in large tanks again, but just for the day. At night, the heat will be taken back and transformed into electricity again, because a heat pump is also a heat engine working in reverse. It can turn electricity into heat in the most efficient way possible, and then turn heat back into electricity. And this round trip is 70% efficient. So you give it 1 kilowatt hour, 1 unit of electrical energy, it can give you back 70% of this at night when you need it. But the cost is very low. It's 4 times cheaper than lithium-ion. This part, the molten salt storage, is 4 times cheaper than lithium-ion batteries today. And ammonia tanks are 500 times cheaper. So combine this whole system per kilowatt hour is 100 times cheaper than lithium-ion. Everything you see here is just like a gas-fired power plant. It's just like a nuclear power plant. It's just like a coal power plant without all the bad things, without the CO2, without the need to procure fuel somewhere, without the need for radioactive fuel always, or without any radioactive risk. So it gives you the peace of mind that all those technologies give the electrical grid today without the bad side. Why it works is because natural gas usually has months of reserves. If the US were to be cut out from all the rest of the world overnight, they could still use the strategic reserves they have to operate the electrical grid for several months. So we need the same kind of storage if we want to take offline the gas-fired and coal-fired power plants. And this is exactly what the system achieves. It's a long-term vision. I expect you will probably have lots of questions about this technical ones, so don't worry, we are here to answer questions. So this is it for the presentation. We are decarbonizing industrial heat cost effectively. So it means we make it cheaper not to pollute. We do it by building heat pumps that supply heat in a range of temperatures that has never been addressed before. And to build the demonstration of this technology, we are raising this seed round on WeFunder. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that presentation, Andre. We do have some questions coming in already. So we'll go into those questions here in a moment, but I do want to just, throw a quick reminder. We can't discuss financial projections. We can't talk about the annual growth rate. I know I just saw a question around that. If there are questions around those type of topics, please send a message directly to Frank or Andre, and be more than happy to answer those questions. And also just check the WeFunder page. Those terms are there. And then, yeah, again, so if you have any questions, please reach out directly. Let's talk about feedback. How much feedback have you guys gotten so far?
Feedback? You mean questions and, oh yeah, industry feedback. There is a ton of interest about decarbonization. It's everywhere in the news right now. And companies are making commitments, hard commitments to cut on those CO2 emissions. And sometimes they don't have the technology to meet them. So they're really eager to talk to us. They're really eager to try our technology. They're really curious to see our demonstrator, essentially.
Awesome. And then we have a question here saying, when I invested, you were developing tech to address the issue of storage energy. Is energy storage still the end goal? How and why did you pivot?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the last slide, energy storage is still our end goal. This is what we want to build. This is the 30% of worldwide CO2 emission. It's the elephant in the room. So we do want to address it. Why we pivoted is because we needed a high value market to address the larger market, but lower value. It's like Tesla needed a Model S before it made the Model 3. We really needed that. And we found it in heat pumps, and we couldn't address heat pumps last year. We became able to address them in February 2022 when we found the missing technical brick we needed to turn our Stirling engine into a heat pump.
Who are the competitors and what separates you from those competitors?
Okay, so there are lots of competitors, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be a good sort of company. So basically, there are heat pump competitors. Those cannot go above 200 degrees. And even 200 degrees hasn't been achieved commercially by them. We can go much higher than this. We also have a better efficiency numbers. That's the first thing. Then there are other decarbonized heat solutions, but most of them don't usually they rely on other fuels, or as I mentioned, solar and biofuels. They're basically expensive. With the dwindling cost of solar power, electricity is here to stay as a cheap local power source. So this is why we believe we have good fundamentals.
And Andre, do you want to talk about competitors for storage? I see we have
a question of course. About it. Yeah. So essentially, there are lots of energy storage companies, all of them in different kinds. Some of them are raising concrete blocks to build towers. Some of them are heating and cooling stuff, but doing just that. Some of them are liquefying air, all kinds of different technologies. But most of them only address 10 to 100 hours of storage. It's great and it's useful, but it's not actually critical. What are you replacing when you build that? The answer is you're just replacing lithium ion, because you can't replace natural gas. Natural gas needs months of storage. And so you need months to replace natural gas. The only two technologies we know of that are capable of doing this right now are hydrogen and ammonia. Hydrogen only works if you have what's called an underground salt cavern. It's this kind of geologic formation deep below ground where you can store billions, maybe not billions, but tens of millions of cubic meters of hydrogen. There are some in Texas. There are some in Europe. There are some in many places in the world. But some places don't have them at all. Like Japan, they are almost none in China, very few in South America and Africa. So all those places cannot use hydrogen for seasonal energy storage. So they have to use ammonia. And that's where it gets complicated, because if you want to burn ammonia in a gas turbine or piston engine, it's not very easy to do. You're gonna make tons of secondary pollutants. We don't make them because we burn ammonia outside of the engine because we use a Stirling engine. So this is why we believe we have this very neat position in the competitive landscape to address seasonal energy storage in the long run.
Awesome. And let's talk a little bit about the team. Of the principals, employees, and advisors listed in the deck, who's working full-time?
We have 12 people full-time right now. So Frank and I as co-founders and 10 employees. We have, I think, 2 interns plus part-time, it's kind of long-term internship. It's apprenticeship. And we plan to recruit several more people as this race closes, essentially.
We have a question here that says, how might this relate to powering EVs?
Oh, okay. So essentially 1/3 of worldwide CO2, the next third is oil used to power transportation mostly. A large part of this is for cars. So by switching cars to electric, you are switching their primary energy demand to electric. So all the energies that used to come from oil will come from electricity. So people will have to generate electricity in some way. So we don't just have to decarbonize current electric power. We have to build more to supply EVs. So as we build this new electrical power, it better be solar and wind, because otherwise climate change will not slow down, it will accelerate.
And then we have a question here that has multiple questions in it. Good stuff. I have a number of questions. Here are a few. I am not clear on your beachhead market. Why not focus on using heat directly without any conversion so as not to sacrifice any efficiency? Then the heat pump landscape is somewhat crowded now. Do you have a competitive map? And then another question is, ammonia is highly corrosive and toxic. What will you do to mitigate those associated risks?
Great questions. So the first one, why do we not use heat directly? Actually, when you convert heat into electricity, there is a bad conversion, like a painful conversion. But it's actually the mirror of the conversion is the other direction, which is positive. For 1 unit of electricity, you get more heat. You get more than one, essentially, because the more than one has been taken from the outside world around the factory to make the process hotter. It makes the surrounding air colder and makes the process hotter. So it's more efficient than just using a resistor. But happy to dive more if you write to us directly on this question, because it's critical that people understand why heat pumps matter, why they're good. And people have heat pumps in their houses everywhere. They have fridges, so it's interesting to understand. Then the heat pump market. Why do we believe we have an edge? Exactly because of the parameter I mentioned about the maximum temperature. Heat pumps today on the market cannot reach above 160. Some of them claim 200 C, but they haven't reached that point yet. We can reach much higher than this. And when I say, for example, 200 degrees C air, actually the heat pump must be 270 degrees, because air is a very poor heat conductor. So you need this kind of temperature drop to get the heat into the air in a small enough heat exchanger. So all that protects us from competition, because they simply cannot get to us in those high temperature range. And about ammonia, I do understand that ammonia is corrosive and toxic, but the alternative is nuclear waste, which is even more toxic and dangerous, or global warming, which basically has the potential to kill a lot of biodiversity, which could then in turn cause domino effect on we don't know how many things. And how to mitigate that in the actual world? The ammonia tank will sit at the center of gigawatt scale solar farms. 1 gigawatt is 10 square kilometers. It's really big. And it's a fenced perimeter. And finally, ammonia is lighter than air. So even if it bursts, it will go up as a cloud in the upper atmosphere, not like Lake Neos. It's the opposite. It will float up. And then people use ammonia to fertilize fields. So it's been around in nature, and nature actually produces ammonia as a way to fixate nitrogen for plants. Of course, pure ammonia is toxic, but if it's diluted in the upper atmosphere, we believe it is a tolerable risk compared to the other risks that we are replacing. That's it.
Thank you for those. And any patents on the technology and software?
So we do not have patents yet. We did that on purpose, because when you file a patent, 1.5 years later, the patent is published. And I used all patents and publications from all around the world as inspiration to build many parts of the technology we use without, of course, infringing on them because we're far away. Then we did a patentability study, and we know we are almost alone in the space we're targeting. Once this race progresses, we will file patents and we will engage thrusters, so to speak, to be first to market with that technology, because patents are just a help. They're not a guarantee that you'll be alone.
I know in your presentation, you talked a little bit about partnerships in the roadmap. Do you have any key partnerships currently?
We are building them. We have lots of discussions which are quite advanced. We have a discussion with a food processing hardware manufacturer, so someone making dryers for the food industry. We are in discussions with a Japanese car part manufacturer to help them brace parts together. We are in discussions with various kinds of applications across the spectrum. Probably the first applications that may come to life is hybrid boilers. You know, just like electric cars first were hybrid cars, both gasoline and electric, because that's where electricity has the most marginal value. We might do the same and condense fumes from a conventional boiler to make more heat by heat pumping to reduce the carbon footprint of a conventional boiler. That way, boiler manufacturers can be on board for the first units, and from there we can get someone. We have the foot in the door from there. So we have all those ways currently. We're very active. All the team led by Frank on the commercial side we are really exploring all those options.
Planting the seeds.
Yep.
Then we have a question here. The 1MW prototype is planned for 2025. Why do you need 2 to 3 years to reach that size? And what level of power do we need for your pump to be relevant in industrial applications?
Okay, so 1 megawatt is actually more than enough to get to market. We might even get to market with a 100 kilowatt unit. We will nevertheless start by that scale because it's easier to sell. It's a bigger contract, so we can put manpower on it. It's not a big problem. It takes 2 or 3 years because it's a big breakthrough technologically. People often don't realize this, but steelhead engines have been around for 200 years. Nobody had found how to make them that efficient. So it takes time to really sort out all the glitches. The more cash we have, the faster we can go, essentially. So any better success in the fundraisers might push this tentative schedule ahead of time. Of course, nothing is guaranteed, but the more cash we have, the faster we go.
And can you talk more about the partnership with / incubation at Air Liquide?
Okay, so Air Liquide was really a good help because they were at the right place at the right time. They provided us with labs that we could use right away. They provided us with expertise, for example, on very complex heat exchangers. They had those manufacturing capabilities for the prototyping. They had welders on the spot. They had all this help. And everything was moving very fast. As soon as we need one more unit, they would release us one more unit. And so we could it didn't slow us down. And that is the best thing we could get at that stage. They are still following us. Maybe they will invest someday. Nobody knows, but they are watching us. That's for sure, because they use like 0.1% of worldwide electricity. So that's a big deal.
And then have you performed some kind of market segmentation that you can share, trying to understand where in terms of the industry and geographically will you focus?
Okay, so there are trends, those sort of geographic trends that should imply that the market will be there. It, of course, remains to be checked, but for example, the biggest CO2 tax is in Sweden and Switzerland. So those countries are prime for a technology that favors electricity over gas. They have always used heat pumps, so they know this. They have used them in industry as well. Then there is, in terms of industry, which industry wants it most. I would say it's more what individual company has made the strongest commitments, and in what companies is the top management really aligned on this decarbonization strategy. In which company do they really want to make it fast? It could be paper, it could be food, it could be many things. So right now we are just pushing all those targets, and we will see by the way they come faster or slower that we have hit some sensible quote. So only the future will actually tell this. We just hired an expert called Maria Juliana, who will do just that, as this market analysis, to know exactly where to hit to further refine this map.
Awesome. Let's see what else we have here. Do you want to talk a little more about the raise as a whole? Why go crowdfunding? Instead of going more private.
I actually like this one. It used to be that startups only could go to VCs and sometimes angels. Right now we have crowdfunding, and to me, it's like the benefits of enterprises that are designed to do something about the planet is shared with everyone. Everyone can invest, so everyone can share in the benefits of fixing the planet, essentially. This is how I see it. This is why I love having a community. I love seeing people engaging with us, believing that the climate problem is real, that we have to do something, that we will have kids and grandkids, and the world will change by that time. So we really have to do something. And there is this book called The Human Glitch. It's a French book. It basically says that our brains are frozen genetically from minus 50,000 years ago. And then that didn't really change. So we are wired to work as a tribal entity that works in an endless, abundant surroundings. And this is absolutely not the case right now. And so we have to consciously go against some of our instincts if we plan to survive on everything that's ahead of us. And so to me, it's really a life and death situation. Like, I'm super happy to work on this personally. And I hope more people can join in and just make a difference for this.
And on top of that, what would you say are the top 3 to 5 reasons why? What are the top 3 reasons to invest into Airthium?
Okay, top 3 reasons. First one, first one would be, I guess, the technology, because we see the technology from the inside, so we know what's there, and we know it really has great potential. That's the first. The second is impact. The impact is just tremendous. We can really fix all of electricity, which will be a very big thing down the line. And the third one is the team. We have kind of failed before because we had this previous technological incarnation, and we learned a lot along that way. So it's like we are repeat founders, in a sense. And this team has stuck together for 6 years. So this is why I would invest. Of course, I'm biased, but this is the top 3 reasons I would pick.
Awesome. Frank, is there anything you wanted to add on those reasons?
No, for me, it's 100% the impact. I would have put it first. Yeah, I'm, like a lot of our investors, very concerned about the climate. So. Yeah.
Awesome. And for anyone who wasn't able to attend today, this webinar has been recording, so we will be posting a whole recap video in a couple of days. With that being said, is there anything you want to leave the everyone who's attended today or watching later on with down the line?
I think we have so many questions. I would love to answer all of them.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, with limited time. So if you do have a question that we weren't able to answer today, please send a message directly. Is there an email that we can send these questions to?
The best would be on the platform, actually. we love answering the questions. We take time and effort to answer all the questions on the WeFunder page. I think it's
Yeah.
wefunder.com/Airthium
I'll add the link right here.
ask or write, something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I think we can answer more questions on WeFunder because it's the crowdfunding platform. So there we can go into details about everything.
100%. Yeah, maybe let's see what questions we can see.
There's one question I like. It says from Sebastian, what's holding you back? What's missing for commercial use? And if the technology is so convincing, why do potential partners don't get all in immediately? And I think this one, I think about it a lot, and it's mostly because we don't want to rush things. You know, we discovered the heat pump market last February. Just a week ago with Andrea, we're discovering another market potentially with in the biogas sector, where we could help greenhouses reduce their biogas consumptions by up to 50%. There are really lots of applications. And what I'm focused right now is to find out, okay, which one will be the best application for demonstrator, which would be 100 kilowatt. So it's not everywhere. A lot of industries require a lot more power. And we need a partner that is very open to work with us. And then the second one is which market and which exact application we need to target. And as Andre mentioned it, we have Maria Juliana, who joined us 2-3 weeks ago now. She was supposed to join us this summer, but we had a lot of visa issues because she's not a European. So this delayed a bit. But she's writing right now this report, which will be for us the main guide to help us focus on where to go get those letters of intent from industrial users. So right now we're slowing things down with the current leads that we have. So let us take the time to focus really on the right application before we go all in and get those partners lined up.
Awesome. Let's see. We can probably ask another question or so. We do have a more of a statement more than a question. As Andre, I spoke with Frank.
One also on the diversity of the team.
Yeah, we get that a few times. Yeah, I give instructions to the team every time they go on a recruitment forum. Like every time you get an application which looks good from candidates that could complement us to be more diverse, prioritize them, like answer them immediately, get a meeting immediately. Even despite doing that, it's still hard to get a balanced team. I believe it takes time. Like I spoke with a CEO of a 500 people company recently who told me he had the same problem. Like he would go out of his way to try to balance his team, and despite that, it's always hard. Like the competition is really fierce. In our field, thermodynamics, young PhDs, the existing funnel is already biased. So unbiasing it is an act of faith, and it's a zero-sum game. Some people get a balanced team, while the others get a really unbalanced team. So it's the way it is.
Yeah, we have a statement here. Andre, I spoke with Frank, but I hear your passion and being openly, deeply honest. You may see the benefit of collaborating ASAP. Our universal goals are aligned impeccably. So if you do have questions or about partnerships or any potential partnerships, reach out to Andre or Frank, and yeah, I'm more than happy to answer that.
Yeah. One question about our heat pumps for use in individual homes. Andre, you can answer this one, but I don't think we'll be able
Heating
to.
individual homes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about Stirling engines. It's like, how can I put this? Yeah, there is no easy alternative, but basically our heat pump is designed to go very high in temperature. It's optimized for that. It's like a very high altitude plane is not designed to fly very low. It's not the same strength. Stirling engines what actually happens, they have to harvest what's called the expansion energy, and you don't have to do that when you're at low temperature. So our top efficiency is a coefficient of performance of 3.5. If you're doing low temperature heat pumps like the one in houses, you can go much higher. So we don't believe there is a market there for us unless, and we are still exploring this, extreme events are capital and existing heat pumps have trouble addressing them. This is also possible. Sometimes, for example, you are growing tomatoes in a heated, let's say, greenhouse, and there is a deep freeze event and your heat pump cannot catch up and your whole crop dies. This is a bad thing. So if your heat pump costs more and is a bit less efficient, but it can work even by extreme colds, it might make sense. You know, it's stuff like that.
And what can we investors do to help during this journey?
There are lots of things. Like we spoke with an investor who was an attorney, and he helped us like in some ways. Some people can do intros. Some people know some people who can then do something. It's basically who we are looking for is anyone who can lead to an application of our technology. Anyone who can become a client or a supplier or another investor or someone who is just passionate about this, or some PR to get some great podcasts or get some media coverage. Everything helps. It's a fight by all means, right? Basically, we're judged by, do we leave a planet to our kids or not, right? So if we are part of the solution, which I hope we are, then to me, anything helps. This is what I say to people close to me.
Awesome. And that will wrap our webinar today. Thank you, everyone who attended today, and thank you for anyone who's watching this recap down the line. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on today's webinar. Is there anything else we wanted to add before we sign off today?
Well, I was glad to host this. I was glad to be able to talk directly to the community, because it's different to talk between screens and to talk like in a Zoom chat. The best is, of course, in person, but maybe someday we'll do that. We'll see.
We'll have more of these down the line, so stay tuned for upcoming events. Yeah, like I said, we'll have a whole recap coming, in the future days. Happy holidays, everyone, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.